What's going on, everybody? Felipe here, and welcome back to another video where I will be going over some key differences between the officer side and the enlisted side while I was in the United States Marine Corps. And I hope you guys enjoy it. And if you get something out of it, and if you got your own experiences and you'd like to share, go ahead and throw it in the comments below. All right, let's jump right into this thing. All right, so we're going to start with the officer side first. And honestly, the quality of life in the officer side is going to be freaking awesome. You will enjoy it, but you're also going to pay for it. And what do I mean by pay for it? You are going to work hard. You may work harder than some other officers. You may not work as hard as some of those other officers, right? But your duty as an officer is like you do it for the Marines, right? And something you'll learn at OCS if you go through OCS or if you've been through OCS, right? Is they teach you why are you here? For the Marines. Why are you here? It's for the Marines, right? It's not for yourself. You're supposed to be selfless and take care of your people. So how do you do that? You know, working the long hours, covering down on people, teaching them, stepping in. So a lot of those things, right? So that's what I mean by that. But you know, the quality of is going to be good. So all right, the first thing for the officer side, you go through a 10-week OCS program, or if you do two 6-week sessions through your OSO, your officer selection office, you'll do your junior and then your senior year in college. And it's two 6-week sections, but it's not necessarily 6 weeks because you still got your intake and your outtake pretty much. So the amount of training you're actually doing during those summers when you're doing the split 6-week courses, maybe it's like 4.5 weeks, maybe 5 weeks. But for the 10 week, it's the same thing, right? The first week you're doing all intakes, you're getting your shots, you're doing physicals, all these things, right? Same thing with that last week. You guys are just prepping to exit out, transition over to the TBS side, the basic school. But that's pretty much it. So really, you're looking at about 8.5 weeks of actual physical work at the officer candidate school. So that is compared to a 12-week boot camp on the enlisted side, right? And on the officer side, I believe you get your phones about 4 weeks into the program. So on that fourth weekend, I believe is when you get your phones. You're able to call home and blah blah blah. On the enlisted side, you don't get your phones, right? All right, that is my point one. Point two, way more pay. All right, you are definitely going to get more pay, and every year until you cap out in that pay grade, you will get a pay raise every year, right? So what do I mean by that? So if you are a second lieutenant, you are commissioning into the Marine Corps right out of the bat. You're an O1 with less than 2 years of service. And again, this starts at 2 years, right? So after your second year, then you'll start incurring these extra pay increases, as you say. So your pay will be 38.99. Sorry, 39.98. So $4,000, $2 shy of. This is for the 2025 pay chart, by the way, and I'll go ahead and post it up here so you guys can see, and I'll share a link below. So your pay is $4,000 up until your 2 years in service. Now, the good thing, the other point about this is that as an officer, you will get an automatic promotion at 2 years, at your 24 months, and then about 2 years later, again, you'll get that other promotion. So you'll go from second lieutenant, 2 years later, first lieutenant, 2 years later after that, captain. So those are pretty much guaranteed unless you do something stupid. You get an NJP, you get like a DUI, you get into legal trouble, and then they hold your rank, your promotion, right? So they can do that in the United States Marine Corps or in other branches. They can hold you from being promoted to that next rank. So I'll jump into this using that same O1 example. The second lieutenant example is at 2 years, you should be getting promoted to first lieutenant, which then your pay will jump from 4,000 to 4,600. And these aren't BAH numbers; these are just straight salary numbers. Okay. All right. If you were still second lieutenant and you are being held for legal reasons or something is holding you back from promotion, after 2 years, you're going to get a $200 pay increase. You're going to go from $4,000 to $4,161, so about $163. All right. And then after the third year, over 3 years, you're going to get your $5,000 pay. So it's going to go from 4161 at 2 years to from 2 to 3 years is going to be 4161. After that third year, you're going to get 5,031. So that jump from from your second and third year to your third and fourth years, it's a $900 jump. So it's pretty significant, right? But then after 4 years, at your 4 years, there is no pay increase all the way until you get promoted. So this, if you're a second lieutenant for 20 years in the United States Marine Corps, your pay isn't going to go higher than 5,031 with 20 cents, right? That's where you cap out at. And let's use the first lieutenant for example. You're already 2 years, right? Your pay is 4,600. Your over 2 years is going to be 5,246. So that's what you should be getting, because you will already be over 2 years as a first lieutenant, all the way to your third year, right? After your third year, you're gonna get about an $800 pay bump. You're gonna go from 5,246 to 6042. That's an $800 pay bump. It's pretty awesome. And then if you're a first lieutenant after your third year, right? So and then fourth year, over your 4 years, you're gonna get another pay increase, but it's not as significant, right? So you're looking at about a $200 pay increase from your third and fourth year. That's that kind of difference. And then there's no fifth year, right? After 6 years, you're gonna go up to 63.75. So it's only about $100 difference after that, and that caps you out all the way till 20. So if you retired as a first lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps with over 20 years of service, over 38 years of service, that is the highest you will receive. So, but again, like I said, you get guaranteed promotions from second lieutenant or first lieutenant to captain, right? Unless you're in some kind of legal trouble or they're holding back your promotion. When I was in the Marine Corps, we had COVID happen and they delayed promotions. We weren't in any legal trouble, but they did delay promotions a little bit. Nonetheless, you at 4 years, over 4 years, you should be a captain already. That pay as a captain over 2 years is 6,044, right? 6,044. If you're captain over 3 years, you're 6522. Now, if you're a captain over 4 years, you're at 7112, right? And then over 6 years, you're 7453. Over 8 years, you're 7827. But at this point, you should be picking up major, right? If you haven't already picked up major, especially depending on what time the Marine Corps is in. They may promote you faster, or they may hold off a little bit on those promotions. Anyways, that caps you at over 14 years as a captain at 8674. So again, every year up until 4 years, then it's every 2 years after 4 years. So it's 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, all the way to 40. Okay. And then you cap out at I'll give you those numbers here. As a captain, you will cap out over 12 years. Okay. So, which is awesome, because it's that pay increase is much more than you will see in the enlisted side. All right. So that is my point too. Like, you are going to get a way higher salary. And I'm not saying by way of a whole lot, but because as a second lieutenant, you're getting $4,000 a month, 4 times 12, you're talking about $48,000 a year. And then you still gotta do your taxes, right? So taxes, Social Security, Medicare, you gotta pay all those taxes. So it's not actually 48,000. However, here going into my third point of officer side versus enlisted side. As an officer, regardless if you're married or not, have children or not, if you are a single officer, you will rate basic allowance of housing and basic allowance of subsistence, right? So that, depending on your area, could be a whole bunch of money. If you're in Camp Pendleton, you're talking about $3,800 BAH. I don't have those numbers for you guys. I'll have them up on the slide, on the video for you guys if you guys do want to take a look, and I'll post a link for that below as well for 2025. But you're talking about quite a bit of money, right? It could be, when I was in Camp Pendleton, it was $2,800 as a second lieutenant, and then a $200 BAS, right? Basically on substance. So it was like 250. So I was getting like $3,000 of tax-free money. That's about $36,000. So once you combine that with your salary from the Marines, you're looking at you're actually like over $70,000 as a second lieutenant. Unless you get stuck in some shitty spot like 29 Palms, where BAH is like $1,200, if that, maybe $1,500 now. I remember back then in like 2017 timeframe, it was about $700 of BAH, and BAS with BAS was probably about $1,000 for BAH and BAS, which was kind of shitty in 29 Palms. But again, cost of living was way less, so it depends where you're at in those areas. So that will determine how much you're going to rate. All right. And the last point I had for that was your automatic promotions all the way up into captain. So from second lieutenant, right, you commission as a second lieutenant, you're gonna automatic promotion at 2 years after that. So if you commissioned on December 31st of 2021, 2023 December 31st, you will promote to first lieutenant automatically. All right, unless you do something stupid and you get held back. All right. And then for captain, same thing, right? It's usually about 2 years. And the captain, it's a little bit different. However, um, the difference is that it depends how well you did at the basic school, right? So if you do poor at the basic school, you're going to be on the latter end of the of that scale. And then when they start the promotions, they're going to be like, all right, the first 100 first lieutenants are going to get promoted to captain this month in October when the fiscal year starts. The next 101 to 200 first lieutenants are going to get promoted to captain on November 1st. And then December 1st, we're going to do 201 to 300 lieutenants. And they're going to go down the list until they get to the promotions, they hit their cap, their quota, and then everybody else will get promoted the next year, right? So, but for the most part, they get everybody that year. It's usually roughly about 2 years. I think for me it was about 2 years, 1 month because of the whole COVID thing that pushed everybody back. I was supposed to get promoted November of 2020, November of 2020. Yeah, and I didn't get promoted till January of 2021. So I got held back. Yeah, 1 month, right? I 1 month, and then 2021 I picked up captain. All right, let's jump over to the enlisted side for a little bit. So as you know, for the officer side, you need to have a degree, bachelor's degree. Doesn't matter in what. It can be in cooking, culinary. It can be in freaking farming or agriculture. It can be in architect. It can be in pottery. It can be like making pots and stuff. They don't care. They will freaking they will take you in as long as you score a 74 on your ASVAB. Okay. And you can run the PFT, CFT, and make it through OCS. Really, what they're doing at the officer selection office is making sure if you're going to make it through OCS, because unlike the enlisted side of the OCS, if you do poorly, they'll send you home and you can't come back for 6 months. All right, from the officer candidate school. On the enlisted side, hey, you're obligated whether or not you're at the top of that list or you're at the bottom. You're dead last. You are still going to get through, and you are going to serve your time that you signed on the dotted line, right? So if it was 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, however long your contract is. On the officer side, it's not, because if you do not make it through OCS, they will send you home and you will need to come back 6 months later if you want to try it again. Okay. After OCS, you go into a 26-week program called the basic school, and then they will teach you how to be a rifle platoon commander. On the enlisted side, you do boot camp and then you go to your 1 month training, right? And that's pretty much it for you guys. So you'll get assigned your MOS, you'll go to MOS school, then you'll get assigned your unit. But you don't need a college degree, right? You just need a high school diploma or equivalent. So that's it. And now, again, the pay though is not that great, right? So you're actually making a whole little bit of money, all right? And I have the pay scale here as an E1. If you go in as an E1, if you have some education, you should try to get with the recruiter and try to get you at least the E2 to maybe E4. I don't know, E2, E3, E4. But as an E1, if you go in straight out of high school with nothing else and all you're going to get is an E1, doesn't matter your ASVAB score, you are going to get $2,100 a month. You don't got to pay for housing or food. However, you will only get $2,100 a month. Divide that by 2 pay periods, right? The 1st and the 15th, you're going to get about $1,050 a month. Is that enough to survive? I don't know. There's people that have mortgages that are over $2,000, right? There's people who have payments of cars, or you include phone bill and all other things like that may not cover a lot of those things, and may barely cover that. People that send money to families, send money back home, things like that. So it's barely getting you by. I mean, you're talking about $25,000 a year. E2, you're jumping up another $200, right? Nothing too crazy. 250. From E2 to E3, you're talking about another $120 increase. E3 to E4, you're talking about 2480 to 2700. So you're talking about a roughly $200 difference again. So those pay differences aren't that great. If you go in as a second lieutenant commissioning into the Marine Corps or the other branches, you are going to get paid more than an E7 is getting paid. All right. And actually, we'll bring that back a little bit, because a E7 is going to have anywhere between over 7 years of service. If they did like meritorious promotions all the way up there and they're hot stuff, then they're already at a higher pay period, right? But you are coming in as a second lieutenant. The only one that matches you off the bat is an E5, a sergeant, with over 8 years. And if they're a sergeant with over 8 years, then they're probably not a very good sergeant, and they're probably on their way out, right? The next is the E6, a staff sergeant with over 6 years of service. You are on a level of an E6 with over 6 years of service, coming in as a second lieutenant 01 in the military. All right. As a captain, you are gonna be at about $7,000 over 4 years, and the closest thing to you, yeah, you're already making way more money than a gunny at this point. You are actually equivalent to an E9 with 16 years of service, all right, or a E8 with over 22 years of service. There's not going to be a gunny with over 22 years of service. They're already going to be a master sergeant by that point. Um, so, or yeah, so yeah, it's a big difference, right? You're going to get way more pay, and even on the enlisted side, if you're already E6, E7, I don't. It might make more sense to do the commissioning. And it's a little easier for you guys, right? So if you're trying to go from enlisted to officer side, it's actually a little bit easier. You don't got to go through OCS. You'll go to TBS for some period. If you want to do warrant officer, kind of the same thing. Actually, for the going from enlisted to officer, depending on what route you take, you will not go to OCS, right? If you're going the officer route, then you will just go to warrant officer school. If you're doing like enlisted to officer, then you'll go to OCS. And yeah, cool, you get commission. So, all right, enough with the pay, right? Because I think you guys get it. I beat the dead horse. If you're gonna thinking about joining the Marine Corps or any military branch, definitely consider going to school first, because you are gonna make that in the long run, right? You going to school for 4 years, it's the same as doing enlisted 6 years, right? So it actually even saves you like 2 years. And somebody checked me on that math, but like how I just went over, you are making what a staff sergeant is making with over 6 years. So just something to think about. And then at 2 years, you're getting promoted to first lieutenant. The other thing is, as an enlisted, you do not rate BAH. You rate your BAS or BAS. You rate your BAH and BAS if you're married or have a kid, or you rate it for whatever reason, like your command gave you authority to rate it, right? And then they start paying you that. So all you're seeing is your salary. You're not getting paid for housing. You're not getting paid for food. Your barracks room may not be good, right? They may be moldy. When I was in Quantico, we had moldy rooms. That's just the nature of it, right? I bet you in Japan and Okinawa, they have moldy rooms. I bet you in those areas that are high humidity, heat, like they have rooms that have a lot of issues, right? Because the temperature just freaking produces mold. That's where mold grows. So when I was in Quantico, those Marines that had the unfortunate events of having mold in their room had to go from room to room until they freaking settled them down into barracks that made sense, that were close to their unit. But yeah, I mean, you're risking the chance of getting constantly shuffled. And I get it. People are like, well, you're not paying for housing, blah 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 blah. Yeah, but you're also not getting shitty rooms if they've remodeled them, right? Depending where you're at. If they remodeled them, you're not getting shitty rooms, not moldy rooms, freaking rats or anything running through them. So yeah, I mean, you can't really settle into that anyways, right? And even on the officer side, because again, you're gonna move, right? You're gonna if you're gonna decide to stay in, you're gonna take orders to somewhere else to every 2 to 3 years. So, but either way, like this makes it even worse, because every few months you're shuffling to another room. All right. As I mentioned, promotions for officers, they're kind of guaranteed up until captain to major. All right. On the enlisted side, however, promotions are different. They have like above and below zones, right? So and you need to be either in the zone or above the zone, right? You If you're just like barely making the cut, you want to be on the top of your below zone, right? Because sometimes they bring some of those people back up. So again, for the enlisted, it depends on several factors, right? Your PFT, your CFT, your PME, your if you're a lance corporal, did you go to lance corporal's course? If you're a corporal, did you go to corporal's course? If you're a sergeant, did you go to sergeant's course? Etc. Every rank in the enlisted side, and somewhat on the officer side, has their PME that you need to be hitting every time you get promoted or you're upcoming for that next rank. You want to have those things done, right? You want to be able to show the board that, hey, I am ready for the next level because I've already completed my training and the training for the next rank. I'm already filling these positions. If you're not, ask your staff NCO, your OIC, that, hey, I'm ready for the next step. Put me in a position that is one above, and see how you do it, right? Um, so meritorious promotions, again, if you want to get promoted meritoriously, you got to go above and beyond. You got to show your command that, hey, you are worthy of a meritorious promotion, because some of those meritorious promotion boards, they're hardcore, and they take some pretty good candidates, and you're going to be competing with some top tier Marines or service members. All right. Um, all right, so that is it, guys. Hopefully, that was a short, nice, and sweet video covering down some key differences between the officer side and the enlisted side that I saw in the United States Marine Corps. If you'd like anything you got to share from your experience, comment, do it in the comments below. Thanks, guys. Have a good day.